I feel like it's almost like we're all on that journey. And I think people who are trans and gender non-conforming in all sorts of ways are almost like a beacon for that,
Mm.
and I think that's where the conflict comes from, because it can be uncomfortable for people because we're
Oh
all
yeah.
conforming and we're all like, there's internalized everything, and we're
Yes.
all
Yeah.
oppressed in some way but most people are, not everyone, but
Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I'm your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen.
This podcast is sponsored by the World Energy and Meteorology Council, or WEMC for short. WEMC is an international organisation focused on weather and climate data to support energy transition, and we also work with educators. WEMC have created Teal, an easy-to-use free visualisation tool that enables you to explore climate variables for the past 70 plus years. Get started at tealtool.earth. Find us at wemcouncil.org and follow us on Twitter at wemcouncil.
Hi everybody, back to Coffee and Geography, and I have to say, so the tables have turned, Esther Lemmens.
yes, they have.
That's the most cold opening I've ever had to one of my podcast episodes, and the reason is because I have been a guest of your podcast 3 times?
Oh yeah, weird. Two with just you, and then one with a panel. Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that, folks. But yeah, this is interesting. As Esther said in the green room, it's weird being on the other side of the mic.
Indeed. Yes.
So who is this Esther person then? Well, Esther, who uses the pronouns she, they, is a creator, artist, podcaster, budding writer, truth seeker, gentle activist, and queer mystic. Generally non-conforming, she likes to refer to herself as a rebel with a cause. Her motto is do your thing your way. And I like the way that you put your in capitals there, Esther.
Absolutely.
And she passionately believes that authentic, unapologetic, at times radical self-expression is the most important gift that we can give ourselves and to the world. And here it is, guys, that Esther is the foundation of, and is the foundation? Esther is the founder and the host of the 50 Shades of Gender podcast, and contributing author to the best-selling book Sacred Redesign: How to Free Yourself from Society's Standards and Create Heaven on Earth. Whew!
Wow.
I'll own my little slip-ups there, because I like being this organic. I ain't going to edit out, but
Yeah, why not?
that's an impressive. I was thinking to myself before I came on, Esther, I was like, I'm not going to say 50 Shades of Grey. I'm not going to say 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Not quite the same. Not quite the same.
no,
But I guess it was inspired by the name of that, I suppose. There's lots of 50 Shades projects sort of appeared after that, right? Yeah, quite a few.
indeed, yeah, and whenever I've kind of promoted and mentioned your podcast to people who say you should listen to it, it's called, I always get a giggle in response, because I think that they make that initial link, and I think they probably find it quirky and funny that you've made a play on that. So, and it makes it more memorable anyway.
Right. Well, I
So,
hope it's living up to expectations then.
well, I believe so, because tell everybody what episode are you on now?
I am now on episode, I think last week was episode 81. So next week's episode 82.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
And for Coffee and Geography, this is episode 52. So
Nice.
I
Good
know
going.
it's I can't
Yeah.
believe it, but so we've both got we're both heading towards our hundreds,
Getting there. Yeah,
which is
exactly.
absolutely crazy. All right, I can
Amazing.
see, Esther, that you've got your mug in front of you. So
Got my
what are you
cup there.
sipping on?
Well, actually, I'm having fresh mint tea, which is what I like to have at this time of the day. I love me
Fresh
a
mint
bit of
tea.
fresh mint tea. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're recording this in the evening. It's let's see, so it's the 1st of June tomorrow. So everybody recording at the end of May. Sunrise is 4:40 in the morning,
Wow.
and sunset is 9:06. So technically, the sun still hasn't set yet. Even though, I mean, you're not too far away from me, Esther. It's overcast, grey. It's a bit drizzly and rainy here, but it's still bright.
Yeah, it is still a bit bright, isn't it? Yeah.
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 So you've got your mint brew there. I've got my
Hmm.
decaf tea.
Excellent.
Is there any kind of brand you like to drink, or is it
Well,
something?
I try and, interestingly, because you when you put in your document about, the tea and bringing a cup and stuff and the packaging, I was like, oh, well, I've got a selection of them here because I have my favorites, obviously. But then I thought, well, mint, I try and buy it from like the market or somewhere where I don't get any packaging for it at all,
Mm,
besides a paper bag. So that's what I do try and do, be conscious of that. So, yeah.
sweet. And mint seems to be a bit of a theme at the moment because a couple of episodes ago, when I spoke to Shanique Harris, her choice of brew was a Jamaican mint tea.
Ooh,
And I said, "Where'd you get that from?" She said, "Actually, it's like every time I go and see family in Jamaica, it's like I make sure I bring back some mint, like from Jamaica, because obviously you can get it
amazing.
here, but
Yeah, it must be
got to be
unique.
that Jamaican mint."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. Yeah,
so
there's a
you're
lot of
sec-
difference in it actually. Like in if the different places you buy it from, you can definitely tell the difference. Yeah,
I can
I find.
imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, and I do like to drink like different kinds of tea, and I can even tell. I mean, obviously most of the stuff that us British drink is of course tea blends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they taste different is because they're blended differently. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you get like a pure Assam or a pure, rooibos or something like that, then you can actually, yeah, there is a difference, isn't there, between where they come from
Absolutely.
or
Yeah.
what kind of, yeah, so how they've been
Mm.
grown. So yeah.
Yeah, I do like my nice teas. I'm very serious about tea actually. I have a temperature control kettle that I use. So yeah.
Nice. So
Yeah.
what is that? Does it just tell you just with a digital dial, like just says, or does it? Because
Well,
I'm
mine's
picturing
got
like a
yeah.
fancy color. It goes like a
Like a
certain color when it's
sci-fi
the right.
kettle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, mine doesn't do the colors, which is fine. I don't need the colors, but it's got like buttons for like there's 80, 85, 90, 95, and
Oh
100
yes, yeah,
degrees. Those five settings there are. So yeah. And a
yeah.
keep warm setting as well, which I never really use. But there you go.
That's a good
Mm.
point, actually, isn't it? Because like on some packaging and teas and stuff like that, I actually noticed they do actually recommend like an optimum temperature. I don't. It's not
They do, yeah.
common, but I have
Mm.
seen it. It's like 85 degrees is like the perfect brewing temperature or something like that. I'm like, how
Yeah, it
do you even
depends on
get
the
that?
tea. Yeah, it depends on the tea. So green tea needs a bit of a lower temperature, which is like 80 degrees normally. I think
Mm.
oolong maybe a bit warmer. Black tea and coffee. No, black tea is actually 100 degrees, and
Yeah,
herbal
black
teas
tea
are
just
like
yeah.
100 degrees. But like many green teas like need a lower temperature, and matcha does as well. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to be a bit more careful now because I am purely, you know, stick the kettle on. Oh, it's boiled. Straight in the mug. So I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to be a bit more careful now. And I do have some green tea every now and then. So I'll
Hmm.
just let it cool for a little bit and then put it in, and we'll see the
Yeah,
difference.
good plan. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Good
fine.
thinking.
Okay, you've convinced me. Okay,
Good.
you know, it's twist
Good.
my arm. So, cool. We got the brew in. So you're up there, not too far away from me, up there in Norwich.
Hmm.
So, and you've been in Norwich for a fair while now, I believe.
Yeah, since 1999. I moved
That's
here from the
right.
Netherlands. Yes.
Yes, and I was gonna say you've been up here now for you've been across the well, what do we call it, the North Sea? But I'm thinking of because it's if you drain it, it was land once, the land bridge. I don't know because you say across the
Mm.
pond to
Mm.
the States, so it's just across the water. If you go across the North Sea, is there any
Yeah, I
Dutch
don't
saying
know.
for like those folk over there?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? I've been away from Holland for so long.
Yeah,
Like my Dutch
yeah.
is definitely rusty. And sometimes I come out with stuff and my mum just giggles at me like, you just translated something literally. And I'm like, that's what I used to do. Like when I just moved to the UK, I used to translate like expressions and things literally from Dutch. And people here would look at me as if to say like, what? And now I do it the other way around. So um, that's my way of saying I can't think of a term for it.
Well, okay, then can you give an example though of one of these like literal translations where people either side go what?
Yeah, well, the funniest example I think was when I was way back when I just moved, and I was going to one of those holiday caravan park type things with my then boyfriend, and I remember staying there. The guy who owned the caravan park was showing us around, and there was like a double room and a twin room in this caravan. So he showed us where the double room was, and he said, "And there's a twin room in case you fall out," and he left it at that, and I was so confused, and I was like, if I've fall out. Why would I fall out? But if I fall out, I would just get back in. What is he on about? So I did not know what that expression meant, which I learned then. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like that. It's great. So one of the geography teachers I spoke to his podcast, Louis Viss, gave this really interesting insight because he was let me get this right, and I apologize, Louis, if I get this wrong, but I think he was born in Belgium to a French mother and a British father. Now lives over here in the UK. Um, and he said that he feels like a third culture child where he never really him and his sister never really felt like they totally fit in one place or the other. And this was the real interesting thing he said it's a really strange feeling to only always feel like you fit in 75% of the time, no matter where you go. I mean,
Mm.
have you ever had that feeling at one point, or is it you've become all pretty much so British, even like so Norfolk now, that you're pretty much normal for Norfolk now?
Yeah, I guess I'm normal for Norfolk now. Yeah. Yeah. Now it's interesting because when I moved, I mean, when I visited here, I visited the UK for like a traineeship when I was in college, and I was in Norwich for 6 weeks, and I just loved it, and I felt at home, and it was just, it felt right. And then I went back to Holland, and then when I was here, I met someone, so we had like a long distance thing going on for about a year and a half, and after
Hmm.
that, I decided to move over. And although it was tricky at first because it took me a few years to make friends and things, but I've always just felt at home here. And like when I go to Holland now, I'm like, I can't wait to come back to Norwich because Norwich is home.
Oh, interesting.
If people ask me, do you miss Holland? Do you miss your family? I'm like, no, not really. you know, I don't know why, but I don't. Yeah. So this is very much home for me. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question. Really, is like kind of could you even give a like a ratio or a percentage figure to kind of like how Dutch you feel still? I mean, obviously you're always going to be,
Yeah.
because that's your
Yeah,
background,
that's
but
part of my experience really. It's
yeah,
almost like with the whole, gender conversations, like we all have this different experience of gender, and I feel like part of my experience is woman, part of my experience is Dutch person, so that's part of my background and my history, but I don't yeah, there's a familiarity about it obviously because I know
mm,
it, but I'm not attached to it. I guess that's the
mm,
best way to put it. I'm just not really attached to it. And even
yeah.
even the language, it's funny because like sometimes I have to try and explain to people like what something is translated in Dutch, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. I didn't come up with this
I don't
stuff.
make the rules.
It's like don't shoot the messenger. Yeah, it's a bit like that. And I feel like I can express myself a lot better in English anyway, I feel. Yeah.
Is that because English is just such a convoluted, messy language that there's actually plenty of ways you can express yourself?
Maybe. That's part of its charm. I don't
Part of its
know.
charm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody says that. I mean, of course, I have the empire colonial privilege that I will never really know this way, but people say that
Mm.
English is one of the most difficult languages to learn, apparently, and I have to take their word from it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing is, I think because obviously I grew up with a lot of like, English and especially American TV. So
Right.
it got ingrained in me like from a young age. Although we also had like there was German TV and French and Belgian TV as well, but they
Right.
they dub a lot of stuff. Um, but the English always had subtitles, and I don't know. There's something about subtitles that works really well for me. I actually use subtitles. I've been using them in the last few years, actually, just switching them on because there's something about
Hmm.
hearing it and reading it at the same time that makes my
Interesting.
brain happy or something. I don't know. So that's what I do. But yeah, so I'm used to hearing the English more than hearing like some of the other languages because of the oh no, hang on, how did it work? Did I get that wrong? I don't know. It makes sense in my head. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So I'm used to hearing the English with the subtitles. So yeah, um,
Right.
yeah. Hmm.
I actually have something in my house, and I'm going to do I'm going to do this thing you should never ever do in the middle of recording, is that leave your desk, right?
Yeah.
So I will edit this bit out. So I'm going
Fine.
to go and get you something.
Okay.
So completely coincidentally, a friend of mine gave me
Mm.
these. So
Oh, yay!
everybody, I
Nice.
am showing Esther a lovely vase of tulips.
Very Dutch. And are they
Yeah,
orange and yellow, or
they
red or
are. Yeah,
orange and yellow? Perfect
yeah,
color. Yeah,
orange.
orange is a Dutch color as well. Yeah. We
exactly.
have our red, white, and blue in the flag, and we've got orange. Yeah.
We actually have a
Nice.
little bit of the Netherlands in the house with the like the
Oh, how
tulips.
lovely. I feel all at home.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I was going to speak to Esther, my friend Esther, on this podcast. I've got to get some tulips to make her feel at home. But then you go to say, I just feel like Norwich anyway. I
Yeah.
should have just got you some mustard.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's intriguing, of course, because, and we'll move on to this very shortly, but just goes to show how much identity is fluid and
Mm.
it's always evolving and it never stays stable. And I know that because obviously we live more now in a globalized society, that probably happens more. But
Mhm.
you know, it it's been happening for thousands of years. If people
Mhm.
move, they
Mhm.
migrate naturally, and it's really interesting because when I've been having conversations for this podcast, I speak to folks like yourself. I speak to folks like Louis, but I also speak to folks like Tawny or Candice, who have got indigenous backgrounds and who whose identity has been fluid but for different reasons, and they say people who don't move very very far away, who've got very strong identities with where they are, but maybe the world around them changes and that forces a change in their identity. So it doesn't seem to be a stable thing, or for anyone's life, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like I've been wanting to look more and more into like indigenous gender identities, especially,
Mm,
and it is very linked to culture. It's like you can't separate the two, you know?
yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's a perfect segue. So let's move on to those kind of things then. So the two things then is your
Mhm.
podcast, the 50 Shades of Gender podcast, which is a
Mhm.
fabulous podcast,
Thanks.
and I really do strongly recommend that. Um, Everybody does give that a listen, a try. And so for folks who are completely have no idea what it's about, what
Mhm.
is the 50 Shades of Gender podcast all about?
It's basically sharing stories from like real stories from real people from beyond the gender binaries, basically. Yeah. Having stories like conversations with gender delightful people, I think, as Jeffrey Marsh calls it.
Nice.
Um, yeah. And yeah, it's just about their experience of their gender, what it's like for them. And like it's very intersectional as well. Like we talk about things that are of interest to them, other parts of their identity, and how it all links together and such. Yeah, and I've learned so much from doing it. It's been amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing you've because you've had a couple, speaking with Katie John Went. Hi, Katie. I bet you're listening. Hope you're doing well. And you have these kind of like mini, kind of like reflection episodes. I
Yeah,
think was it every 25. So you had one
every
at
25.
25, and you
Yeah.
got one at 5 and one at 75.
Hmm.
And you just talk about your own experience and what you've kind of learned and the journey that you've undergone. And that's
Mm.
something obviously I really strongly identify with as the podcast host of this, about what I
Hmm.
have learned as the host
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
conversations that I've had.
Yeah.
So and I know that you've spoken to me as a friend about how profound you found some of these things, but probably for people listening, can you perhaps give maybe one or two examples of kind of how you've had maybe a wow moment, or something
Mm.
was difficult to grasp before, but when you spoke to a couple of people, you're like, oh my god, okay. Is there any
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
moments you can share with us?
Absolutely.
I know
There's
you
at
got
least one
lots.
of those. Yeah, there's at least one of those per episode, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
mind blown. Okay, wow. Got to sit with it for a bit. I mean, one of the ones that comes to mind at the moment was I had a conversation with Cassian, who runs the gender census. And I talked
Yes,
to
yeah,
them about, their experience and like what they've learned from doing the gender census, because they've been getting more and more responses, like tens of thousands of them at the moment. I
yeah.
think they get every year now. Um, and they said, if you look inside yourself for a gender, what do you find? And I was like, oh no, I can't find anything. And they said, isn't that interesting? Because I look inside myself and I can't find anything. And I think the label that they used at the time was agender, I believe.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I guess I'm a woman, but what does that mean to me? Am I? What is that? What is that about? So I've just started digging and like unearthing all this stuff. So yeah, and another conversation that comes to mind was actually with a Two Spirit Lakota woman in the States that I had a chat with, Beverly Little Thunder, and that was it was just a lovely conversation as well.
That's one of my
And
favorite episodes.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, she's very like she's so youthful, I find, in her energy and how she speaks and stuff like that. And yeah, just some of the stuff she talked about, her experiences. I've also listened to her audiobook, like some of the stuff she's been through, which is wow, it's some of it is pretty horrendous, but like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and also, but like the that they don't really make a distinction, she said, like between sexuality and gender and how it's all kind of interlinked, and the term two spirit and
Mm.
all that kind of thing. And wow, yeah, and so many more. Hmm.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word intersectionality as well.
Mm,
And having these conversations, you see how all these people are both have all these things in connection, but they have so much different experiences, and it's just such a rich tapestry that your episodes really portray. Um,
mm,
and and as you've as time's gone on, you started to do the kind of things that I've started to do now that I'm on episode 50 whatever, and that is you
mhm,
start referring back, and you start saying, it's funny because I had the same conversation with who kind of approached this way, and then you'd kind of like weave in those intersections, and it just makes it
mm,
so yeah. And for me, when I listen to your podcast, I feel even if the person you're spoke, this is what's beautiful for me, is that I may be a member of this broad community, this gender non-conforming community,
mhm,
but it makes me appreciate and just reminds myself that we are so hugely diverse in ourselves, and we're
mm,
so hugely unique, and we have intersections but differences as nuanced but as far removed as any other community, any other two groups
mm,
of people on this planet. And
mhm.
that's what's so beautiful to me. It
Yeah,
makes me, it's comfort that I'm both special, but I'm also normal, if you know what I mean. I'm just
yeah,
part of this tapestry.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
delightful listen as a trans person, and yeah, and when I've had conversations with Indigenous folk myself and
Mm,
queer Indigenous folk as well, one of the
mm,
things that I've learned is that they are what's best way to phrase this they can see the issues that are taking place with the westernization almost of gender. They've been
mm,
all the colonization of gender's taken place and
mm,
things like that, so they're fighting that battle on their end. And
mm,
then but the thing that I found really interesting when I've spoken to some folk is, and they turn around and say, but the battle to push against that should not be westernized either. um, so for example, when you talk about trans day of visibility or trans
mhm,
day of remembrance, it's lovely that you want to bring, for example, two spirit people into that, but
mhm,
being two spirit and being what's transgender through a Western construct is not necessarily the same thing. You know,
mhm,
the vast majority of two spirit people will not say that they're transgender, for
mhm,
example.
mhm,
And so when I have conversation like that and I have that kind of realization, it's
mm.
just like you just said, it's mind blowing. And I'm like, wow, not only are we got to be decolonial with trying to get our identities back as gender non-conforming people, but we've got to make
Mm.
sure we don't do it in a colonial way.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And like, I think getting our identities back is like, I think something that we all, I feel like it's almost like we're all on that journey. And I think people who are trans and gender non-conforming in all sorts of ways are almost like a beacon for that,
Mm.
and I think that's where the conflict comes from, because it can be uncomfortable for people because we're
Oh
all
yeah.
conforming and we're all like, there's internalized everything, and we're
Yes.
all
Yeah.
oppressed in some way for the most, but most people are, not everyone, but that's the thing. But yeah, it's like rediscovering who you are and like what matters to me and like, all that stuff. It's like, wow.
Mm.
It's mind-blowing, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've I'm just going to get folks to just listen to a little tiny clip here, and if they're regular listeners, they will recognise one of the voices on this.
Like what I've heard a lot of people say, it's just small gestures like using the right pronouns can be so affirming for people, and it can give them real gender euphoria. That's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Right?
to echo that, it is like the best feeling in the world. I started uni with one name, and I think I tried out about two or three names before I settled on Roe, and I think the way in which I went about that is I firstly just trialed different names for some friends. I might have practiced it a few times in the mirror, just kind of saying, oh, hi, my name is this, and just kind of getting used to it and working it out. There's some online forums which you can join. There's a non-binary page that I join on Facebook, and you can kind of put some pictures of yourself and describe yourself and say, hey, what kind of names do you think would suit me? And just try and work it out from there. And once I had settled on my name, Ro, there was new friends, which I didn't have to explain things to because all they knew me was Ro. And that is the best feeling in the world. But with old friends and particularly lecturers and some advisors that knew me as my legal name, that was quite scary, quite intimidating, because it is that transition process, and especially for lecturers who, know you on a bit more of a professional level. But I found the best way I went about it was I just changed it in my email. I would, change my sign off.
So that was yourself, Ro Proctor, and myself talking as part of this collaboration that we all did for my work for UEA called Pride in High Aspirations, where we all talked about the experience of being queer at higher education and kind of like top tips for young people coming up to higher education about what they can do. And I just want to say thank you, Esther, for kind of like hosting that discussion. It was a really beautiful discussion, and it was lovely to kind of just be a part of it and have these youngsters, because it did make me feel a bit old, but all these like young university students that like, they're like little queer babies, they're good about doing the thing, they're feeling proud of they
lovely,
are,
wasn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you for organising it all. You did a lot of the hard work.
well, we did say, didn't we needed to collaborate at one point, and we got it, and I think it worked really, really well, and it was so we could very happy that we could now let me remember, was that episode 49?
I think you're right. Yes.
Yeah. Because one of the things you do on your reflection ones, isn't it, is that Katie guesses you to guess the number or guess the.
Yeah, up 1 through to 20, I was like, spot on, I've got this. And then afterwards, it gets a bit, 20 to 25, I'm like, oh, and after that, it's just a blur now. It's like, oh no, I wanted to remember them all so I could be like, in episode so and so, number this, you hear about this, and that's like, no, it's not going to. I have the general gist of it, and I've got the names, obviously, so that helps.
Yes.
But the episode number that's linked to the name, that escapes me like often now.
See, I've and this is where regular listeners are going to tell me that I'm wrong now, but the one that I will always remember is it's two, is episode 11, because my eldest is always like, can you play episode 11 again, because that's the one I'm on. So Theo was co-host for about 3 minutes on that with the punk biologist Lucy Eckersley, which was pretty cool. They talked a little bit about Studio Ghibli and stuff like that, which was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
And I keep fangirling over Adil Hussain, as I told you this when on episode 14, because he was in Star Trek Discovery, and I was like, it's so good, because you're a little bit of a Trekkie as well. Cool. So
absolutely, yeah.
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 Hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. I'm tempted to go and talk about Trek now, but I've done that many times with folks like Andy and Sean, so I'm going to shove that to the side. So moving on from the podcast into this book that you've contributed to called Sacred Redesign. I mean, this seems to link so much together, like what you've been saying last episode with regards to the wonderful Kat Poe, who's a queer mixed race person who talked about kind of freeing yourself from society standards. You talked about the conforming to capitalism and things like that. And then this is so fascinating. How did this come about? I mean, I've been approached to write a chapter in a book for diverse educators. I'm like, it just falls in your lap sometimes, but was this something that fell in your lap, or was this something that you approached someone? How did it come about?
Well, kind of. I mean, I'm on the email list for this lady I work with in Australia who does energy healing work and things like that. And she, there was actually the person who published the book, AMA Publishing, Adriana, her name is, she does this like, she does collaborative books, like a lot of those. So, every few months, basically. And it was the previous book that actually piqued my interest because my friend, the energy worker person, sent an email out saying, "Oh, this is happening. I'm going to contribute. If it feels resonant for you, then I'm offering like a free session." Do you know what I mean? So there was this package deal going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, part of me was like, yeah, let's do it. And I set up a chat with Adriana. We had a conversation and it was like, oh, this feels so resonant, so good. And then the momentum kind of died down. It kind of like the
Yeah.
wave just sort of stopped. And I was like, oh, okay. Part of me was a bit puzzled. And I was like, I was so pumped for this. What is happening? And then it was like, it's okay, just let it be. And then I got a message from someone else saying, this opportunity will arise again, like a channel message, which I'm into. Woo woo. So yeah, and they said like, this opportunity will come round. It will come around again. And I was like, okay, so that reassured me. And then I noticed this book coming up and the title of it and the energy about it, and I was like, there you go. That's why I wasn't, drawn to the previous one, because although that sparked something,
Yeah.
actually this one felt more right. So this is the one I went with. So yeah.
So what's the title of your chapter or your section?
You know what? I didn't actually give it a title. Yeah. What title would it be?
Okay. Yeah. So if you were to give your
what
part
would
a title, what would it be?
Yeah, I was thinking about, actually, this is the title of a book I'm thinking of writing maybe one day, and it's called Sense of Self.
Okay.
There's something about that. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about, again, I think finding who you are and rediscovering and unlearning and deconditioning and all that stuff, and realizing what's really going on, and but it can be very it's very confronting at times. It's not an easy path. Like ignorance is bliss, as he says in The Matrix, which is true.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the second episode in a row we've got the Matrix reference again. Kat Poe mentioned about it last episode. Okay, so kind of give us a little very short synopsis then of kind of what your contribution was about. So was it? Did you use any of your learnings from doing the podcast in it?
Yeah, so I mean that was my intention, but the thing is, when I signed up, it was like part of my soul or my inner self, whatever you want to call it, was a bit like, yes, we're doing this, and I was like, but what am I going to write about? My brain got involved. I was like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to write about.
Yeah.
But I was like, just say yes, and we'll figure it out as we go. So that was kind of the idea. And then I've basically been brain dumping, because that was like 2 or 3 months before the actual deadline of submitting the chapter. So I've been brain dumping ideas for like ages, like, oh, here's an idea. Oh, here's an idea. So I was just had a random Evernote file of, notes. And it got closer and closer to this deadline, which I think was maybe mid-March or something. And it was like it was like the week before. And I was like, seriously, I need to pull my finger out. I need to get writing. What am I going to write about? So I started, writing a bit of this, bit of that, and I just wasn't feeling it. So then I discovered this new tea shop in Norwich, that just kind of also what I start describing in the book. So I discovered this new tea shop. After a few days, I sat in and someone came in and we got chatting. We just hit it off, fast friends. And they told me about their gender dysphoria. Like they just opened up about it and we just got on really well. And I feel like the meeting, I started then writing it down how we met. And I thought that's going to lead into something. So I let that then go into like how my own journey and how it all came together. And yeah, it just became something, and it was like, wow, there it is, rather than overthink it. I felt like I needed to be it was very much an inner process, rather than practical. Obviously there is a practical side to it, but it was very much like a letting it flow and trusting the process kind of thing involved in it. And it was kind of amazing how it came together. So yeah.
Is this your first ever contribution to a book?
It is, although there is a blog post I wrote about years ago, how I cured myself of the psoriasis I had for 20 years. And that was actually the book that was part of that journey was by Dr. David Hamilton. It's called How the Mind Can Heal the Body. And he brought out a new edition of this book where he collected stories from people, who had done that, exactly like how they cured themselves of things. and that short, blog post or that post, that story got included in that book. So that was really exciting. So
Awesome.
yeah, a very, very different thing, obviously, but
Yeah.
this is very different, sort of collaborating and contributing a whole chapter with the intention of writing for a book.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's pretty
yeah,
scary. So we're both
yes,
in that respect. Then we're both this year, first time published authors in terms of in a book that you can flick through, and
yeah,
yeah, it's exactly the same. You get really excited. You kind of have these ideas about what you want to talk about. You're very passionate about it, and you sit down
mm,
and you just suddenly like writer's block, or what the hell am I
yeah,
doing? How do I even start? And
yeah,
and I started keeping post-it notes and a pencil with me like nearby, because
yeah,
most most of my ideas would either come while I'm trying to get to sleep, or
yeah,
in the middle of the night when
exactly,
I've got up to go to the toilet, or
yeah,
in the shower.
yes,
It happens in the shower a lot, so
yeah,
I did that, and then and as you say, like just talking to people and finding out, and then hearing certain words that you think, oh, that's it, that's the kind of. So
yeah,
for my chapter in Diverse Educators, I talked about the pit. So it was the power and the pitfalls of privilege, of visibility privilege, power and the pitfalls of visibility privilege, because um, for me, I I've been on such a massive journey, as you well know. You're one of the very first people I spoke to, and you know, coming on as your first guest on your podcast was part of my way of starting that journey and coming to terms with everything. And
hmm,
and I remember saying to you that I've got a lot of privilege in being the fact that I can be visible, I can be out. And so I wanted to
yeah,
write about that. And so I talked
hmm,
about, the fact that if you have the visibility privilege, how powerful it could be, what it could be a force for good. So, and I didn't want to
mm,
say, I didn't want to be condescending or patronizing. So that's why I said the pitfalls. This is what, rather than, oh, woe is me, I have all this privilege. It was more of the
mm,
case of, there can be some
yeah, of
drawbacks, and when you are out and about and
course,
proud, these things come about. And I talked
totally.
about I came across this thing when I was just doing some research online called the visibility paradox. Um, which,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, which so basically all about where you are out and you're proud and you're not shy about it and all that kind of stuff. So of course, when
Mm,
things happen, you're there, you're always the person they tend to go to, as like,
mm,
and a lot of burden goes on you,
mm,
as the
mm,
almost the token trans person or the token gender non-conforming person or something like that. So
totally.
yeah, it's
Mm,
so you're right. And I would say, folks, I mean, Esther, you can give your top tip or your encouragement, but I would say, folks, if you've ever had the opportunity, the chance, or the temptation to write, to get published, I would say, yeah, go for it. Seek an opportunity where you could be like a contributor of a few pages to a collaborative, probably book or something. That would probably be the best way to do it to get you started, rather than trying a whole book.
mhm.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah,
Go
that's
for it.
true, actually. Yeah, yeah, because it's a small way to get started, and it's a step
Yeah.
which can then lead to more things, or bigger things, or like, not that they have to be compared in size, but there you go. Yeah.
We're not
Um,
comparing size here.
we're not comparing size. No, that's not what we do.
Yeah, and I just want to say a massive thank you to Hannah Wilson and Benny Cara for giving me the opportunity. They're the two editors of the book, um,
Amazing.
and I'm hoping to be doing some more stuff in the future. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. So when is your book out yet, or is it not? I don't actually know.
Yeah, it is.
It
It
is.
was released on 11th of April. So yeah,
Wow. Oh goodness, that's
it's
a big book.
it is.
What is the
So
book called?
it's called Diverse Educators: A Manifesto. So it's based on
Ooh.
the 9 protected characteristics. And
Hmm.
have you noticed, everybody, that Esther's turned into the host now? She's kind of turned the tables on me.
Sneaky.
Sneaky. All right, I'll answer this one question. I'm taking the reins back, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so it's based on the 9 protected characteristics, and it's a set of um, it's it's quite nice because there are some bits which are quite researchy, quite academic in it, but mostly it's
Mhm.
kind of like stories of people's lived
Yeah.
experiences about what it's like to be an educator of color, an
Mhm.
educator with a disability, an educator from,
Yeah.
Gypsy Roma background, from gender
Mhm.
non-conforming background, and yeah, and it kind of like, and it's structured in such a way where it gives food for thought. It gives discussion points, and then it ends with, your what you would like the pledge to the manifesto to make education more diverse from the educator's point of view. And it's just a really well
Amazing.
crafted book. Guys,
Nice.
I don't get any royalties for this. This is not why we wrote it. None of us get any royalties for this.
Yeah, I
So
don't get royalties for mine, actually. I think the money
exactly,
goes to charity, I
yeah,
believe.
and that's fine
That is
by
how it
me,
works. Yeah.
and that is
Yeah.
100% fine. If this makes the education sector, a happier place for more people to be in,
Totally. Yeah.
that's job done.
Nice.
Right. Okay.
Congrats.
Flipping back to you now. Thank you.
Yay.
No, you meant actually. It's funny how you mentioned like 20 years ago you did this, because when I asked you the question in regards to tell me something geographical, you said, well, you try to be quite sustainable and green. Like, you've not used shampoo for 20 years. You use, and I'm just did I pronounce this right? Is it Rasol clay for over a decade?
Yeah, Rasul, I think. Yeah.
Rasol clay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's from Morocco, and I think it's also transported by boat. It's very, very well, thought out and very ethically and sustainably done, I believe. It's sun dried and all sorts of things. So yeah, it's this powder, and you mix it with water, and that's what I use. I still use it as a body wash. I used to use it for my hair, which I don't now. But yeah, it's so cool. Like, sometimes I feel a bit morally superior. Like, do you know what I mean? At least I haven't contributed to, okay, I use an iPhone, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like that. We're all guilty of something, aren't we? I mean, we do what we can. So yeah. So that was a bit of a change, although not too bad. I mean, I'm used to the stuff, and I really love it. It feels lovely on your skin as well. So I really recommend it. I wouldn't say it's suitable for everyone's hair, because my hair is quite fine and it suits that, or it suited that. But if you've got really thick hair, maybe not so much. I don't know. It's worth trying out though. But then I've had people say, oh yeah, they're really interested. And like, I used to rave about it as well. And they were like, oh, I'll try it out. And they try it once and they're like, oh, I don't like it. I'm like, well, you need to give it time, because your hair's going to need to, adjust. So it is, you have to give yourself time for like allow for that transitional period, as with many new things that you try out,
Yeah. And actually, that's why a lot of people don't follow through on things, like say, well, like not using shampoo in your hair, is like, but then it goes that really kind of thick grit, but then it sorts itself out. But people don't get past that stage, do they? It's
that is true. Well, the thing is, because I'd been using this Rasul clay, I was like feeling all smug. I was like, oh, if I go like water only, that's going to be a doddle, because I haven't used shampoo. But the thing is, I mean, the clay, it does cleanse the hair, so it does still take stuff out of it, just not in the same way as shampoo does. But I found that when I went water only, I did that like a few months after lockdown started, because I thought, why the hell not? So, but it was like the second week was horrendous. It was, and I think that's when a lot of people give up and they try other things, like, the bicarb or the vinegar, or they grab all sorts of things. They're like, make it stop. This is horrible, because it was really, really not pleasant. But yeah, that's the adjustment phase, right? So your hair, like your scalp has to get used to, because your scalp is still in that mode of like, must produce sebum because it's all been stripped out, so it takes a while for your scalp to be like, oh, hang on, guys, we don't have to do so much of this stuff anymore. It's okay, we can calm down. So yeah, it took a few weeks, but then it sort of stabilized. And I've never loved my hair more. It's gone a bit wavy now. And it's like, I've kind of always wanted wavy hair. I even had like a perm of sorts put in when I was younger, do you know what I mean, to get the same effect. And now it's like, it does that naturally.
Naturally
like,
wavy.
Nice. Yes.
And the hard water doesn't do it any harm at all, because for folks who don't know, this part of the UK, this part of the world, the water is very hard. It's got a lot of calcium carbonate dissolved in it, because we have chalk bedrock. So, but no, it seems your hair's fine.
Yeah, I had to get used to it though, because like I had to figure out what to do with my hair, because it's very different from using shampoo or anything else. Because if I shampoo and stuff, if people say, oh, I've got such high maintenance hair, I'm like, you know nothing. Do you know what I mean? No, you don't. Well, maybe you do. Everyone knows that of themselves. But like,
yes,
I found that using water only, you have to really scrub and like, massage and like do. It's very sort of, you have to be quite vigorous with your scalp and stuff to work all the stuff through your hair, and you have to like brush it out before so I found a whole range of things to do that I need to do to make sure it's sustainable for me. So yeah.
Nice. I'm going to give it a try, because I've got very fine hair as well, and I'm growing it out as long as I can, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So I just looked online. This is from Radiance by WebMD, right? So Rasul clay is used for skincare, hair, beauty products. There are a lot of claims about how it can help your skin, but there's not much research. It's not a treatment for skin. Okay, it didn't say about skin. We're talking about hair here. It's also called Ghassul clay or red Moroccan clay because it comes from Morocco. People have been using it as a shampoo and soap for centuries. The term rasul comes from the Arabic word rasala, which means to wash.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And
I think you'll like it. It's it feels very pleasant. But then that's me saying that, obviously. I think if you're not used to using like natural products like that, and you're used to your soaps and your, scented stuff, then you might be a bit like, why am I washing in mud? Do you know what I mean? Because it does feel like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah. Oh,
I
it looks
like
pretty
it.
good.
Maybe it's the
And I,
hippie in me. Yeah.
and I love it. It talks about, it does have any health benefits. It says, well, if there's research, not much research, all that kind of stuff. This is the best bit, right? What are the risks? So apart from saying is that, if you could have a reaction, because of course, if you're trying anything, you need to test it on whatever
Yeah.
first. You don't have a reaction,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's
But
very a
here's what it
risk
says.
balancing.
What are the
Yeah.
risks? Do not eat it, basically.
Oh yeah, disclaimers like,
Yeah.
when you buy some salmon, it says careful, contains
Yeah.
fish, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
It says,
Yeah.
never eat Rasul clay. It could have bacteria, parasites, viruses, and heavy metals in it. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, it's from the ground. Okay, eating clay could
Yeah.
lead to low potassium and muscle weakness. Okay, I wasn't
Mhm.
never going to eat it. It's fine.
No, it's not
Yeah.
for internal cleansing.
May contain nuts. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
So, oh, okay. Oh, we're going to bring this to a close now, because it's been a lovely, lovely, lovely chat.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this final bit because
Mhm.
we're going to link you up with our previous guest, who I've already mentioned, is the wonderful Kat Poe, who I know is listening. Hi, Kat. Thank you again for last week. It was so cool. And the We Are All Geographers Challenge. So to link all you folks together. So last week, Kat had to link the word language to something, a part of her life, or some geography or something like that, which is the second time someone has chosen the word language. So it was really interesting that we had a different perspective there. Now, the word that Kat has given you, Esther, is genuine.
Genuine.
I think that's perfect for you because of what the way you conduct yourself, the what you get out of your podcasts, and I've always, and I've always seen you as this genuine person. I gravitated towards you as a friend very quickly, I felt, because you were just such a genuine spirit. But this is not about me and how I feel about you. This is about what you think about the word genuine. So Esther,
Oh, yeah. I
30
love it.
seconds to riff about the word genuine in any way, shape, or form you wish to riff about it. So whenever
Okay. I
you
hope
want to
you're
start.
timing me. Yeah, genuine. It's kind of like the word authentic, isn't it? And it may be a little bit overused, especially in the spiritual community, but it is, I think, the most important thing we can be for ourselves and other people and the world, to be honest, because there is nothing better than being genuinely and authentically yourself. And that means that we probably have to do a bit of digging and a bit of weeding to find those bits, because we have all gotten a bit lost.
Oh,
Yay!
boom. Ah, that's just so nice. I these last bits of the podcast I always really, really, really love, because I just get this warm, fuzzy feeling when people just do that kind of wheel geographers. I know that everyone's linking together, and hopefully people listening having a go at it as well. So but yeah, that was a very genuine response, Esther.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yay!
cool. So before I forget to ask you, for my next guest, what word would you like to pass on to them?
That is a good question. I was hoping it would come to me before now, but it hasn't. So I'll have to come up with something on the spot. So the word that comes to me now is expression.
Nice. I'm going to write that down before I forget.
I'm glad something came. Wow.
Expression.
I was like, oh no, what if nothing comes? It's like, you got to trust the process, right?
Yeah, you got to
Just
trust the process.
let it be
First thing
like
that comes
whatever.
to mind.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go with it. Just go with it.
I love it. Expression. Okay, folks, listen out for that next week for expression. Right, Esther. So last two things to do then is any shout outs you'd like to give? We always said hi to Katie.
Oh. Hello, Katie. Yeah.
Hi, Katie.
Yeah. We went to True Stories Live at the Art Centre the other night, and that
Sweet.
was really lovely. And there's going to be one for Pride, I think, on the 31st of July.
Yep.
So that's going to be lovely. As well as a human library as well on the same day at the Art Centre. Yeah. That's all I can think of at the moment. Yes.
So yeah, and I'll give another plug for Norwich Pride because I'm going to, because every year they have a discussion panel, and I'm going to be one of the guests on the panel this year, which is really, really nice. Yeah, which is going to be really cool, and I know that they're very well attended. I'm pretty nervous,
but it'll be great. I'll come see you.
Yeah. Well, you were one of my cheerleaders for my first Norwich Pride after coming out. Remember I did the poetry performance on the green just outside the birdcage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like you were there, and you were helping looking after my kids, completely unprepared. So bless you.
That was lovely.
So yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And so yeah, that's on the end of July. So folks, if you're in the if the Norwich Pride is, I mean, obviously Brighton Pride and is obviously the gold standard because they just go nuts down there. But honestly, Norwich Pride is such a good event. It's really big for a small city, and there's so much going on. There's so much to do. The parade is freaking huge, and yeah. So if you're in the Norwich area, even if you're not in the Norwich area, go look up Norwich Pride. Why don't we just give? Yeah. Let's give Joe and everybody who runs Norwich Pride and all that kind of stuff. Give them a shout out. Hi, folks. I hope all the preparation's going well.
Awesome.
And yeah, so in terms of making connections then, how can folks find you on social media, and how can they find your podcast?
Well, the podcast lives on 50shadesofgender.com, which is FIFTY rather than the number. And we're on the socials under @50shadesgender, but that is a number. Just to be a little bit confusing about it. Find us on Patreon if you want to, help us out. And where else am I? Those are the places. Yeah. And the podcast is anywhere and everywhere on Apple and Spotify, on all the places. Yeah.
That's it, folks. That's it. So don't even bother listening to the lead out and the outro now. Just go and say bye, everybody. Go subscribe to 50 Shades Gender Podcast. Do it right now. But while everyone's now gone, Esther, it's now time for me to say it's been absolutely lovely catching up with you. Hopefully we'll get up to Norwich sooner rather than later so we can hang out again. And
that'd be lovely. It's been too long.
It's been way too long. Absolutely. So thank you very, very much, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter @CoffeeJogPod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandjog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.